Good morning. Thank you very much, John. And thank you to all of you for coming out this morning. It's really an honor to be a part of this program today. I imagine that I'm no different than many of you when I say that I feel like I found my tribe in the conscious capitalism community. It's great to discover that there are principles or tenets that give names to the way we've intuitively tried to conduct ourselves in our jobs, businesses, and our communities. And I imagine we also share an increasingly urgent sense of purpose and responsibility to show the next generation that capitalism, pursued consciously, can indeed elevate humanity to meet the needs of people and the planet. I love the theme of today's program, Raising the Bar, the intentional journey of a conscious company, because I think we are all saying yes to raising the bar for how we approach capitalism. And we raise the bar by deciding to be on an intentional journey of practicing the four tenets of conscious capitalism: higher purpose, stakeholder orientation, conscious leadership, and conscious culture. In a few minutes, you will hear stories from leaders at TriStar Trust about the journey they and their employees are on to live the four tenets of conscious capitalism in their company. But before we hear from them, I want to take a few minutes to focus on the stakeholder orientation tenet, specifically contributing value for one of your most important stakeholders, your employees. Employees are top of mind for employers today. Finding skilled talent is the number one challenge employers say they face, followed by how to retain and keep them engaged. But attracting, retaining, and engaging your talent is not going to be your biggest HR challenge. It's actually going to be whether and how you will develop your employees' abilities to continuously learn and grow their people and technical skills to meet the needs of your business. And developing the next generation of leaders is a challenge many company founders, CEOs, and boards are facing right now. The bulk of my career has been devoted to the people side of business, specifically helping people in organizations resolve communications and interpersonal problems and work together more productively. Like I'm sure all of you, I've experienced and witnessed how workplace culture can bring out our best human qualities and our worst human tendencies. And like you, I've seen the real impacts and costs of effective and ineffective leadership for both employers and employees. As a trainer and coach, I've provided many of the training of traditional resources such as leadership workshops and coaching to develop foundational leadership skills. Many employees say after a workshop or program experience, they are excited and motivated to try out what they've learned. But it's common to stumble when attempting to apply the concepts and skills in daily work. In other cases, employees became disillusioned because the concepts they learned weren't always observable in their leaders, nor fostered in their work culture. 8 years ago, I had what you might call a come to Jesus moment in my career. I found myself questioning the effectiveness of our approach to leadership and people skills development. Research studies were validating my own experience that it is hard to retain what we learn, and that many leadership programs are not producing the desired level of sustained improvement in leadership abilities. But at the same time, I knew it was also true that I and many individuals have had profound and often transformative personal and professional growth experiences because of employers' investments in our individual and team development. Seeing the challenges, but also the vital importance of human skills development led to a lot of deep reflection, talks with clients, colleagues, and research. What emerged for me was a clearer picture of the real barriers to overcome and the opportunities for real contribution from a more holistic and integrated approach to people development in the workplace. In our book, conscious, capable, and ready to contribute, how employee development can become the highest form of social contribution. My co-author and company co-founder, Ed Ofterdinger, and I share our view of the imperatives and the potential of human development at work and how it can transform organizations and business as we know it. We share our perspective and vision through a relatable and entertaining fable. It's a story of how a co-founder and CEO transformed his troubled firm by discovering the power of building a true culture of development for the good of all. I won't spoil the story, but I will share the underlying premise and ideas in our book. It starts with sharing two converging imperatives that now require us to look at the role of people development in the workplace differently. Next, I'll share some significant implications for organizations. And then I want to share a huge opportunity that we are not talking about. I'll end by sharing some practical steps your company can and may already be taking to create the conditions for a more conscious and effective approach to developing employees. So what are these imperatives? Well, the first imperative is a growing realization that organizations need employees at all levels operating consistently at higher levels of cognitive, emotional, and social intelligence. The reason is because we have to be able to learn and adapt continuously in a world that is fast-changing and more technically and socially complex. While interpersonal differences and challenges are a normal part of working together in an organization, in today's volatile and competitive business environment, companies can no longer afford the opportunity costs and time and resources from letting people and culture problems in organizations fester for days, months, or even years. We believe the single most important competitive advantage and determinant of business success for both employers and employees will be the ability to develop ourselves personally and learn and adapt quickly to constantly changing realities and opportunities. The second imperative is a growing consciousness among all generations, but especially the emerging generation, that the modern workplace in all its forms can and must become an environment where working adults of all backgrounds grow all their human capabilities and realize their full potential to experience acceptance, well-being, meaningful purpose, contribution, and fulfillment. In a world where many of our institutions seem to be unstable and uncertain, more employees now see business, their employers, as a stabilizing, reliable source for help and guidance to grow their capabilities so they can succeed, not just in their jobs, but in life. So we see at least three big implications for organizations from these converging imperatives. The first implication is that we will need to embrace human development as an expanded view of the purpose of modern business. Simply put, business will need to take a more conscious role in developing the human capabilities of working adults. Think about it. Where do most working adults get exposed to and learn people skills like emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, effective communications, and the list goes on? If we all agree that developing our personal and professional abilities will be a lifelong requirement of working adults and the organizations that employ them, then perhaps it's time to expand the purpose of modern organizations from a singular focus on delivering value to people through products and services to also include contributing to the development and potential of working adults. I say this because when we elevate developing people to the level of organizational core purpose, then it becomes easier for employers and employees to embrace all the implications that come with creating and sustaining a conscious and vibrant development culture. It rationalizes and invites a broader role for the function of learning and development in your organization. It shifts the view of learning and development from a discretionary business cost to being embedded as a core element of a company's business strategy. And it bridges the relationship between the work adults perform every day and the developmental journey each adult is on to learn and grow the full capabilities they need to be successful at work, at home, and in society. So if we accept this first implication, then a second implication is that organizations will have to get much better at developing the skills and capabilities of their employees. For decades, businesses in virtually every industry have provided access to training for employees for the specific technical and management skills required of their jobs. Today, however, we know that the non-technical soft skills are just as important as any technical skill and are foundational for people and leadership roles, not to mention being able to work well with fellow employees and customers. And even though we look to family and educational systems to build these foundational people skills in young people, the truth is that the way we actually develop people skills is not in a classroom, but on the job with other people and progressively over time and with age. But it's not for lack of trying or investing in development. Recent data suggests that U.S. companies collectively spend $166 billion annually on leadership development alone. Unfortunately, however, companies say they are not getting reliable results from their learning and development investments. This second implication leads to a third implication. Organizations will have to be better designed to foster a more holistic and integrated approach to developing the skills and capabilities of all their employees. The reason we say this is because until more recently, we haven't really designed our business culture, systems, and practices in ways that support everyday learning and growth. It's not to say that we aren't learning and growing at work every day. It's just that we're not leveraging all the ways the workday can support employees to develop themselves and each other. We think of learning and development as a separate activity that we do outside of our daily jobs. But what research shows, and business increasingly knows, is that the environment that is best for human learning and development is also best for optimal work productivity and engagement. Both employers and employees need learning and development to be more practical, more cost-efficient, sustainable, and effective. To achieve this, companies have to shift toward a more holistic approach in which learning and development is an explicit part of the company's culture and more integrated into the flow of everyday work. So these are imperatives and implications we are all talking more about. But there is a huge opportunity we are not talking about: the role businesses can play and contribute to the development and full potential of working adults. Consider that organizations now have the ability to incorporate decades of research from the fields of human and organizational psychology, adult development, and neuroscience on how we learn and develop. When you put all this together, you can begin to appreciate the important role modern organizations can and already do play in supporting the ongoing human development of working adults. Enabling your employees to develop the skills and capabilities to better cope, manage, and contribute to their world, at work, in their families, and in their communities, is not an insignificant contribution. We believe that developing people is not only key to business and career success, but it is what will make the most positive difference in our world. If you think about it, we recognize and incentivize companies for being responsible and committed stewards of our environment. We recognize and incentivize companies for their philanthropic commitment and contributions to their communities and many social causes. but we do not actually recognize and incentivize companies for their commitment and investment in developing their employees' human capabilities. That's why we believe it's time to go from what has been an implicit to a more explicit recognition of the role organizations play in developing the capabilities of working adults. It's time to make people development in the workplace a recognized and incentivized form of social contribution. By now, you might be thinking, Catherine, this all sounds great, but how do we go about designing and living a more conscious and integrated approach to people development in our company? In our book, we suggest 5 practical approaches or strategies that can help leaders enhance or get started in building a more conscious development culture. These strategies are like building blocks or architecture. Together, they support and reinforce the culture and practices that make it easier to leverage learning and growth from every aspect of the business today. The 5 strategies we encourage exploring are understanding the role of leaders, aligning business and people development strategies, identifying core people capabilities your business needs to be successful, defining development culture principles, and embedding development messages and practices into the employee life cycle. For the sake of time, I will encourage you to read more about our take on these strategies in our book. And for sure, there are more and more wonderful resources on how to create a more deliberate development culture in your organization. But I want to end by pointing out that if you are a conscious capitalist committed with your employees to the journey of being a conscious company, then none of what I've shared about the necessity and potential of people development at work is a revelation or necessarily a big stretch to realize in your company. You understand how people development can be an expanded purpose in your company. You understand the essential role leaders must play to own, model, and drive the development agenda in your business. And you understand that conscious culture is what expands and elevates the lives of your vital stakeholders, your employees. What is most important to remember is that growing your employees and your company consciously is an imperfect journey. It just requires leaders to be committed to the journey.